You starting us off?
Oh, I thought you were starting us off.
Oh, I'm starting us off. I'm like, hey. Hello, and welcome to Frequency Broads. I am Tara.
And I am Victoria, and we are so happy you're here today. Today, we will be tuning in to our own personal practice. And I'd like to get us started with a grounding practice to root us into our bodies, allow us to receive this information that comes through, and to tune in with you as the collective consciousness and what information will best serve you. So I'd like you to take your right hand and place it over your heart and your left hand over your lower abdomen. Take a deep breath in, expanding your lower abdomen, inhaling the air up into your chest and into your throat, and slowly exhaling the air through your mouth, your chest, your ribs, and your lower abdomen. We're going to take 2 more breaths. And briefly constricting at the top, holding for 1, 2, 3, exhaling through the mouth. And 1 more breath like that, inhaling into the lower abdomen, up through the ribs, the heart, the throat, holding it for 1, 2, 3. And taking a few moments, tuning in to the area where your heart, your hand connection is, as well as your lower chakras, your second chakra, your dantian, your belly, your gut center, these information centers that have so much information waiting for you to access. And join me with 1 final breath, inhaling in and exhaling out, shaking your hands away from your body and moving your shoulders, shaking your chest, your hips, whatever part of your body feels called to move and groove. And what better segue for us to talk about our own personal practice? Tara and I have been practicing embodiment through dance for the past year, almost year. And
yes.
It has taken us to the next level and deepened our practice beyond, I think, either of us imagined possible. And it just feels so damn good.
I mean, right now, even just, I wasn't expecting to get that deep in our breath. And now it's just like, I can't stop moving my body.
Move and groove.
Just so if you see me moving my body throughout the video, please don't mind me. There is no music in the background. This is just how my body wants to move. And you're so right. As we touched upon in the previous episode, I grew up very spiritually aware, but there wasn't a lot of movement in that. To no fault of my mother or my own, it just wasn't a part of our practice of that, like, embodiment in that way. It was a lot of stillness, which is what I needed in the moment. And I'm really feeling this call, and I know you are too, for this like movement embodiment where it's like just free movement. As much as I love a good juicy asana and flowing through the poses, and there's a purpose for that, there's also such beautiful doors that can be opened inside ourselves by just free freaking movement. I do it every goddamn day now, and I love it. But let's get into my favorite part, the polarizing of you and I and how our practice looks so different, and yet we show up with each other to share that space. And I'm like, oh shit, you got that? I got the same thing. You're feeling nauseous, I'm feeling nauseous. You're getting this download, I'm getting this download. And it just really sings true to the fact that there is no right way to connect. When you connect, and that's it. You get the information that you're meant to get in that time. You speak to the people that you speak to who are meant to hear it. That's you, baby. That's you out there. That's you. And it rings true, it resonates, or maybe it doesn't. Like we talked about last time, like that rigidness that we give others when we shine brightly, it's fine. The reason they call it divine timing is because it needs to be aligned to your frequency for you to get it, for you to understand it. It's always there. You just got to tap into that field. So let's get into it. How do you embody, girl? What does your practice look like? How do you feel the energies daily and use it and move it and groove it? And I'm really feeling it right now. I'm telling you, right? I'm ready to rap. If I knew how to rap, like, ooh,
I'm surprised you don't.
No,
but
I'm
that
terrible.
was, yeah, that wasn't.
I can't even, if I listen to a rap song, even if I know the words, my mouth cannot go that fast.
And dyslexia.
Yeah. Oh, dear Lord. Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to say that, you know, for years and years, I've had amazing teachers, mentors, spiritual guides in my life. And they'd always say, Victoria, have you been meditating? And I always got a little, I don't know, defensive because I don't feel like my form of meditation looks like what we're taught. And I think there's so many different modalities that fall under the umbrella of meditation. For me, meditation is extreme cardio. It's walking up a mountain. It is shaking my body. It is, you know, it can look in the ways that I think we are already showing up and caring for ourselves. So I just want to pat those people on the back for who are already moving energy in their bodies. It just hasn't been looked at in a spiritual lens, which we're here to wash those rose-colored glasses punch them right out, shatter that shit.
Crack them. Crack them. Honestly, you're right. It's your morning cup of coffee where you sit outside and take a deep breath. It's your talking to someone else about checking in with yourself. Meditation is just tuning into yourself. Again, something we're going to talk about very deeply in another episode is that inner universe, that knowledge, the answers you're looking for, why you're feeling a certain way, why you're triggered, how to move through this energy. It's in here, baby. So however you do it, through music, through art, through movement, through meditation, quietly sitting, whatever that works for you. There is no time constraint. There is no right way to do it. It's just tapping into how you access this information. So like Victoria said, although we've just been dancing for this year, I mean, I've been dancing my whole life, but you know what I mean? Tuning in that way, it sounds like, Victoria, you have found meditation through movement your entire life.
Well, yes and no. I think what it really comes down to is I've found this balance between when to tune inward and when to tune outward. And that can play a huge role in how you show up, how you project your energy onto others, and how it is projected onto you. And I think there's this practice that needs to take place slipping between that turning inward and outward. And that's why I think it's so beautiful to have a balanced practice where I sit, I observe, I watch the crows, I watch the sunset, I contemplate. I need a blank wall in my space to stare at because that is my form. I need to focus on something. But then I balance it out with like extreme movement. And it's not always extreme. I listen to my body and what it's calling for. But it's that, am I tuning in? Am I tuning out? And at a split of a second, knowing when and how to do so efficiently, effectively, and responsibly.
And correct me if I'm wrong, when you say tuning out, you're talking about tuning into the outward energy of what's being, in your physical space, in the global consciousness, what's happening with the planets. Is that what you mean by tuning out?
Yeah, I suppose so. How the outside world is affecting me.
As opposed to like tuning out, like not paying attention. You mean just looking at the external forces as opposed to the internal forces, which play together constantly and mimic each other and show a lot of synchronicities. But there's individual things that we're dealing with internally as opposed to as a collective feeling these energies coming from different planets and constellations and yada, 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 yada. You know what I mean? All the external juices coming in.
Juices. Also known as energy.
Or frequency. Frequency broads, because every broad's got her own frequency. Gender excluded, y'all all got your own frequency. And everything else, like you said in the last episode, has its own frequency. So how do we walk this life having all this buzzing inside us, playing with all of the tunes that are bouncing off of us, and still be able to take out the garbage and do the dishes and show up to work and be in a relationship or be by ourselves or be in friendships? It could get really freaking noisy. And I think you have to find what works for you to organize this frequency, to create the symphony that you need to hear. And, for you, it's movement. And movement, as I'm doing all the time this episode, is definitely a part of it for me. But like I said in the last episode, it's journaling. I document everything. And it started when I recognized that, I was doing it for something else. Like I was being asked to journal about my asana practice for another program I was in. And through that kind of forced hand, I recognized that I channel through automatic writing. I'll start writing and all of a sudden I recognize that this is no longer my voice, my human voice, and it's talking to me. And that's how I really tune in every morning or every day, is to give myself the opportunity to reflect on the energies that were happening externally, what happened at work, what happened in my relationship, and then how it's playing with the energies internally. And it's not just, I don't know where I'm saying not, it is. It's that practice that leads my intuition into how tending to it. Do you have a moment, Victoria, for me to drop a really interesting story that I have yet to tell you?
Ooh, drop it.
Okay, so as I mentioned prior, my partner and I did a releasing ceremony because we're both in a death cycle right now, which is an elongated period where we are frozen, where we are dying, and we are not yet ready to be reborn. After our closing ceremony, the next morning, we both woke up super nauseous. And there's a good chance we got some food cart food that didn't go that well. But my immediate first thought rules, because I got clear channels running, was like, we need to move. So one of our teachers, mine and Victoria's, does what she calls a prayer in motion that I've now used in my everyday life, where you put intentional words to movement to embody that frequency and that message within every ounce, every cell in your being. Luckily, I have a very wonderful partner who will just follow along with all the crazy hoo-has that I take him through.
Yeah, shout out to Andrew. We love you, Andrew.
He's very open and aware and accepting, but this isn't really a part of his being currently. But he accepts who I am and will step up for me, and I'm very grateful for that. And I don't know if there's anyone out there who would match me well enough and accept all of this without having the belief themselves. But we did this prayer in motion a couple times in the morning to kind of let go of that a little bit. And I felt the difference as my heart started racing. I was like, I'm feeling it running the energy. So I just went for like another 5 minutes, redoing the movement. Then immediately got pulled to pull a card. I'm like, okay, pull 3 cards. What they mean is regardless. One of them, though, was dancing with life. And I was like, oh, so funny. I just danced to get this out. I finished journaling on that last card, and I did not move. I was moved to get up and started moving very serpentine-like, opening up that spine, opening up the energies. And then instantly I had a hive on my left hand. Left is energy coming in. And I started scratching. And I don't know where the truth is behind this, and nor does it matter, but I grew up with, if your hand is itchy, it has to do with money. If you subconsciously scratch in, that's money coming in. If you scratch out, that means your money is going out. So I just started scratching in, and I was like, oh, that was the other card, was asking Mother Earth for what you need, whether it even is financial abundance. So I started scratching in, shifted quickly, lit a candle, was like, boom, we're going to call in, this and that, financial abundance, financial security, financial support. And then it led me to the next thing. And it was just such a beautiful thing when I sat down after to say, I am really after, I just turned 30. I've been spiritual my whole life. And I am finally, truly, without questioning or needing to know the why or how, showing up and listening to what my body and my soul is asking for. It told me to move. It was like I was already up. It told me, hey, you need to focus and call in money if that's what you need right now. Boom. I had that symbol that is not going to work for everybody. But that was my symbol that I know. And I'll tell you, as soon as I lit the candle, the hive was gone. And it was just like one thing after the other, after the other. The book that I'm reading, thank you, Victoria, that she gave me, was directly linked to that third and final card about tuning into this channel and activating everything. And it was just so, I can't say it enough, beautiful to step into that space and just trust that what I'm being asked to do, or the first thought that come to mind, is fueling me. After that, I instantly felt so much better physically, emotionally, and mentally. And I was just given the gift of synchronicities throughout the rest of the day to feel like, yes, this was true, right? A song came out from an artist that hadn't released a song in 15 years that was releasing energy that no longer serves you, and now is the present moment.
Wow.
And grateful for being grateful. A beautiful chorus. If anybody, check out their latest album.
Who?
But beautiful chorus.
Beautiful chorus. Okay.
You know them,
Oh.
but they haven't released anything in 15 or since 2015, not 15 years, in 7 years.
Oh.
And then of course it drops the day that I'm tuning into all of these very similar messages. And it's about being able to, like you said, tune in and recognize what I need, and tune out and recognize where it's linked and how I can continue walking this path.
What a beautiful experience. Synchronicity.
Thank you for holding space for me, by the way.
Always. Always. Synchronicities are the funnest gifts I think we receive from the universe, aside from blessings, if you will. But I think getting confirmation that what we're tuning into is in alignment. I think all we're really wanting to experience right now is alignment and resonance. And the idea of dissonance, I don't think is discussed as often as resonance is, but it's important to know because we all experience it and say goodbye to things in certain ways, or don't wait until it's way past its expiration date. But dissonance is such an important guidepost or sign in our lives to be aware of and follow. And I think that, I really appreciate all of the beautiful rituals that you partake in. I feel like my practice is so much less formal, and I'd say hedonism has gotten a bad rap. I very much live a tantric lifestyle, and I think that the way it's portrayed or described in our society today shows up as quote unquote hedonism, but that's actually not it at all for me. I find the pleasures in the little things like seeing crows fly or having, some sort of alignment show up. I tune into all of my senses visually, through touch. Scent is huge. If you know me or have met me in person, I love my perfume, which I know probably isn't the best for my endocrine system, but
I'll tell you, it smells delicious. And anytime she hugs me, I walk away sniffing my shoulder for a while because I don't wear perfume or anything. And I'm like, I got the book you gave back. I was like,
Aww.
Yes, it smells good.
Thank you. Yeah. So scent is a huge component of my practice. I need the air flowing in my space. I need the, scent to be crisp and tuned to however I'm feeling that day. And, really looking at our senses, I think it's important for us. We grew up learning about our five senses, but then there are the other senses like clairaudience, the clairs. And I think they're equally, it's kind of this beautiful scale of what we grew up knowing as the most obvious way to tune in. And then the other clairs that I think more of us are going to be honing in on our gifts and which ones really make up our energetic blueprint and how it will lead to a more satisfying experience here on earth.
I agree. And I love that you said yours is a little less structured, because I think it shows true to our upbringing as well, right? I grew up, like I said, with a spiritual mother who identifies as a witch and has her own coven, like was very, we're going to meet and we're going to do this very ritual based. And I love to see that yours is very different, is not as structured. And although mine is loosening its structure, something I've realized is when I'm being called to embody something, I love making an altar. I love it. I love being creative and just using my intuition and saying, yeah, let's grab this and let's grab that and set it up in this geometric pattern or not, and call in and embody that way. But for you, it looks different. And yet we both show up getting the same information, feeling that alignment and feeling the resonance. And I love what you said about dissonance, because it's not talked about enough. And I think you're right, it's not discussed. It's actually a blessing in disguise, because it's telling you something needs to shift. And if you're tuned into that, it's not, I mean, in the moment it could be quite annoying, but it's not an annoyance. It's not troublesome. It's just, this relationship no longer is working. This job is no longer working. This limiting thought or behavior is no longer working. And when we feel that dissonance and we're like, ugh, I don't like this. Yeah, you're not meant to like everything all the time. You're going through cycles, you're shifting, you're changing, and that's a beautiful thing. And being able to accept that and see it as a window of opportunity, an opportunity for growth and change. It can be scary, and there will be grieving. And that's something that we're really going to talk about, because it's not honored and accepted as it should be. But that in itself is a beautiful thing. You had something you loved or connected with so much that you want to grieve it. Dissonance is that it needs time to grieve. Resonance needs time to be celebrated. And it's about being able to tune in and tune out to recognize when you want and feel the need to celebrate or to grieve, and honoring and accepting that.
It takes such courage to show up and experience everything that you're talking about, from grief to celebrating the resonance. It is not easy to change. And some of us, from an astrological perspective, have a lot of fixed signs in our chart, which often makes it, a little difficult to embrace change. Scorpio is one of those signs, which Tara's a Scorpio rising or ascendant, and I'm a Scorpio sun with many, many more planets in Scorpio. But that rigidity, I don't know, rigidity?
Rigidity, I like that. Crickety, rigidity.
It is kind of, yeah.
Crunchy.
It is crunchy and not always sexy, and it doesn't always feel good. And it's important to note that you are going through change and you are making progress when you're not feeling good. And I think for many of us who have been on the spiritual path and taking inspiration from books, other spiritual speakers, this quest to always feel good actually steers us away from the ultimate healing that happens when you allow yourself to feel everything that arises.
Yeah. And I think that's a part of our practice, if I could speak for both of us, is in whatever way honoring and accepting what is showing up inside of us. So if that's my shadow who's been hurt a million times and has been triggered and coming up, it's not judging myself. It's accepting myself and saying, you need to feel this right now. You are hurt. What can I do for you? How can I make you feel the love, right? I read in the book, Earth, shadow defines light, right? You cannot have shadow without light. You cannot have light without a shadow. Everything has its polarity. And if you try to live a life where you're only feeling these quote unquote happy light feelings, that's never good. You're just going to feel more suffering because you're holding on to this attachment of what it needs to feel like. You don't need to be anything. You don't need to do anything. You just need to show up and best tend to yourself. And that's what feeds the consciousness. That's what's going to better your relationships with others and with yourself.
I mean, I'll just say it bluntly that when you don't allow yourself to feel everything, you're ultimately just lying to yourself. And if you're lying to yourself, that means you're lying to others and you're not cultivating authentic relationships built on honesty and trust. It's so crucial that in order to enter into a partnership or a friendship or be in any sort of interaction with another human being, you gotta know how you're showing up.
That's my favorite thing when my students are like, oh, this and this happened. I'm like, what energy did you bring to the situation? Not pushing away that you've experienced something that was hurtful and that what this person did to you may have been wrong, but how did you show up? And then how did you respond to the way they showed up? Because it's a dance, it's an energetic exchange. And when you learn how to flow through the dance of this energetic exchange with you and the planet, you and the cosmos, you and relationships, you can better with ease just accept and find gratitude for every step along the way. And, you know, Victoria is not belittling the fact that it's hard to show up and feel those tough feelings, those grieving and sadness and loneliness. But they're important and they're trying to tell you something. And by finding your own way, whether it be journaling, going for a walk, dancing, breathing, that you check in and try to discover what your individual emotions or physical pain is meaning to you, you're never going to know what energy you're putting out there.
So true. I really love this emphasis on educating ourselves on how to regulate our nervous systems because it really does play into how we respond to certain situations. And sometimes there's such a strong emotion that's evoked and you can't hide it. And even if you are hiding it with your mouth, you may not be hiding it with your eyes or your energy. And it's important to feel all the feels as you know, we'll continue to encourage each other to feel. But it's you know, I lately have been in this in between state, similar to you describing your death. It's important to note that the death phase happens and then there's what I like to call the incubation period. Before you can be reborn, you have to integrate everything that had just happened, mourn, grieve, say goodbye. I think that we're all stepping into this new paradigm of ourselves and we can't take the old self with us. And it's really painful to have our minds understand and comprehend and then energetically say goodbye to this part of us who's been with us along our whole journey. You know, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there's this full death or release, which it often is, but there's almost this integration into the next self. And I really do believe in this law of reciprocity, where in order to receive something new, you have to leave something behind in reverence to what was and what will be. And during this incubation period, or sometimes I like to call it the in-between, the feeling of nothing can arise. Like you don't feel happy, you don't feel sad, you literally feel nothing. And of course, this can often be deemed as depression, which I really do believe depression can be one of our deepest forms of healing. It's, you know, a kind of a gray line between depression and this, mourning period. But knowing how to get yourself out of it or surrendering to that feeling and allowing what comes next to guide you is so important.
Oh, thank you so much for saying all of that, because that is something that I'm really starting to learn a little bit more now. I always loved this concept of the law of three, life, death, rebirth. And the way that my brain visualized it was this long line of life. And I'm not even talking about my life and then I die because this vessel is over. I mean, like a stretch of lifetime, a quick snap of a death, and then I'm rebirthed. And I think it's because I was always so attuned to the moon, which is 28 days, but it was still like new moon, full moon, we're dropping this, we're gaining more, that I never sat in that incubation period.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time that I'm really diving deep, honoring and loving this incubation period. And I think that where it becomes really hard and leads into some deep depressions is when we're grasping on to where we last left off because we are fearful that we haven't yet begun the next phase or become who we are. And that's why, whereas sometimes I'll do a little ceremony where I'm releasing what no longer serves me, I was truly called to do this closing ceremony as a way of closing that door and thanking that. And it wasn't just, oh, I no longer want to be fearful. It's, I was, and I did have an addictive personality. And that I needed to know about myself because, like you said prior, I too went through the period of numbing myself. And now, granted, it was a very slippy slope, and I went pretty far down. And I'm very grateful that I myself was able to pick myself up and get out of my addictions. But not everyone is as grateful, and I'm truly thankful for that. But
And you've allowed yourself to tap into this community who's ready to pick you up and support you through this journey. And, sometimes geographically, we may not be blessed with people who resonate with us or can support us in this way. But thankfully, we live in this day and age where we can connect with people virtually. And energy can be felt over a screen, over a microphone, over a telephone. So I don't want to totally disregard the process that takes place when you call on your community and you do surrender and you say, hey, I need your love and support right now, because you do the same for us.
And it's needed. It's needed. You don't have to do this alone. And that's why we're hoping that sharing our stories can show you that, even someone who's quote unquote higher in their spiritual practice or further along in their spiritual practice, which is all bullshit, by the way, I still need help. There are times where I'm trying to release and I can't, and I need to just go to my partner and he needs to hold me. And that's when I can cry, and that's when I can release. And it's during this period of incubation that I really recognized the need to loosen the grip. Victoria, my favorite line is, it's serious, but you don't have to be. And I have taken my spiritual practice so seriously, and it has caused me to have such major imposter syndrome that I can't serve others because I don't have this certification and I didn't go to this many years of schooling under a mentor. And that is 100% helpful. Absolutely. I'm so grateful for the teachers that I've had in the past couple years and the books that I've read and podcasts and videos that I've watched where I feel resonated with me. But you don't need those things. It's about being confident and tuning into yourself and checking in as often as you possibly can in whatever way works for you and honoring that. And I think where I went through my really, really heavy, portion of depression in high school, it's because I was grasping on, and my ego had me in this spiral that I was listening to, staying in the same cycle, as opposed to listening to my intuition, which takes you in, instead of a circle, this spiral where you're growing and learning and falling and coming back up. And what a beautiful process that is, because as we see with nature, The next flower cannot bloom until the previous one dies and releases its seeds. And then that seed is in an incubation period for months. Accept that, love that, honor that. Know that it's needed for you to grow and that we ourselves are continuously experiencing it. I know both of us are in this death phase, this incubation period currently, and it's not easy. And we cannot do it alone. We need to rely on each other to know that we are supported, to know we are cradled in the earth, in the soil, in the womb of each other, in our frequency. So thank you for being my helper.
Likewise. Yeah. I, feel really called to talk about integration because it is such a trendy word. And I think learning how your body needs to receive deep rest is the best medicine for integration. Deep rest is not always easy for personalities like ours, where we want to accomplish a lot in this world. We want to show up, we want to be present and do all the things. And I think, Tara, you've witnessed me over the past couple of months just overextend myself in so many ways because I want to be part of so many different social circles or events or organizations or workshops, or like I want to experience life to the fullest. But in order for me to do so, I need to step back. I need a day to myself. I need maybe multiple days to myself. And that's why part of my practice is reserving Friday nights to myself. My Friday night date night with me has been a tradition I've celebrated for probably the past 2.5 years. And we love date night with me. It usually consists of me dancing in front of my mirror for a while and just feeling sexy and embodied and fully tapped in. And I really do feel like it sets the tone for the rest of my weekend where I feel rested. I've said goodbye to the week, and I'm setting a new tone for rest, relaxation, socialization, whatever the days bring on the weekend. But it's important, I think, to treat yourself to these simple pleasures and simple practices that are so much easier. And that's the thing with energy. It's so much more obvious. It's so much, I think, easier to tune in when you're not trying so damn hard and that, you're in the flow and you're just kind of in that in between state of letting things happen to you and for you and with you while also kind of steering your own ship.
Oh, I love that. It reminded me of a line from a song that I'm obsessed with currently. And it's rest and ease is productivity, right? Like you need to rest. You need it for your physical body, for your mental body, your emotional body, and your energetic body. And that integration may look differently for everybody, but ultimately it's taking the time to pause. Mm-hmm. And pausing however that looks for you. Sleeping, sitting in child's pose instead of dancing like crazy like I normally would, maybe journaling about the things that I've been talking about, or however you can sit with that and just rest and let it sink into the body, because your cells store this information and it needs time to sit and be read by the body, to accept. And we tend to rush through life, and I think it's partially to culture, to where we live, right? Living in New York City my whole life, if I wasn't productive, and the way that I grew up, if I wasn't productive, I was a piece of shit. And it took me so long to recognize that I'm still worthy if I'm on the couch, because that's what my body is calling for me to do. And that is why it is part of my personal practice to journal on the floor, half asleep. Because I'm like, I need to be in this state of rest for me to truly listen to what I'm doing, right? That's why after asana, you have shavasana, because it's the movement that allows you to sit in ease and listen and feel and let it drop into the body, into the cells. And I think a lot of people have trouble with that, largely to social media showing us all the things that we're missing. And we get FOMO and we're like, I should be doing that and I should have done this. When in reality, you would have just been a fucking grump if you went, because your body doesn't want you there and you don't want to be there. You just feel bad for missing out. But everything's happening here that you need. So like you said, if you need time to recharge before being social, whether it be a couple hours or a couple days, that's what you need to be your 100%, to show up authentically.
I'm so happy you brought up the topic of social media, because I was thinking in my mind, what is rest and what is not rest? Rest for me is not doom scrolling, not content consuming. I love to see what other people are doing out there in the world. I love to stay inspired. But for me, part of my practice recently has been moderating how much I am on social media. Tara, I really admire the fact that you haven't been on social media in quite some time. And I've really been able to witness how deep you've gone in your practice, because you're not picking up on all this external bullshit that, like, has a time and place, but most of the time it's kind of steering us away from ourselves. And I really am a firm believer that the more rooted we are in our core and our beliefs, which can change, we encourage them to change, right? There's no swaying us off of our center of who we are. And yeah.
Not taking away from the beauty that social media has brought us to some extent, the connectivity. Like we said, you don't always have the support you need in your vicinity. So it's nice to find community. But I'm coming up on my 2 years of not being on social media. And for my journey, it has helped immensely, because I always felt I needed to be productive to be worthy. And seeing other people being productive in the moments that I wasn't, because those were the moments I was on social media, made me feel like shit. Never mind that I moved from New York to Oregon and felt really left out while my friends were doing things. But it allowed me to get out of the box that social media told me I needed to be in to be worthy. And it allowed me to play. And by being able to tune into yourself happens when you play. It happens when you play with these clairs, when you go out and you get into nature and you're like, whoop, I'm going to go this way, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to follow this, or I'm going to go on the swings, or I'm going to pick up this stick. I don't know. Like, that's what allows you to tap into yourself and tune in. That's why I say it's serious, but you don't have to be, because if you're too in your mind trying to fit the box that others are trying to tell you you need to be in, you aren't living authentically. And in order to tune into yourself, you need to find your authentic self. And you do that through play. And the first step to being comfortable in that play as an adult is doing so by yourself. I feel like it's hard to be vulnerable and fully in play with others if you haven't explored it yourself. And when we are in that rest incubation period where we're scrolling, we don't allow ourselves to play because we feel like we should be doing X, Y, or Z. Whereas now I don't have that option. So when I'm bored, what can I do? I can watch TV, which I do a lot of, but then I get bored. So I'm like, now what? I can go for a walk, or I can dance in my room, or I can color, and it allows me to explore through play. That childlike innocence, without judgment, without restraints, without saying this wasn't good enough. Who cares? Literally, no one.
Except you.
No one. Except you. Like, when you post something on social media and you're worried if people are going to judge you or not, like, that's real and it affects you. That's why you got to be mindful as how you use these tools. They could be great tools or tools of destruction. You need to find the space that's right for you. And for me, even currently, social media for myself, I'm still not ready for it. And I'm excited to tap into it a little bit more in our joint journey, me and Victoria, but I also know, and I'm grateful to be in partnership with Victoria because she knows how mindful that I need to be myself specifically with social media, because I'll get caught up in wanting to show my practice in a perfect light when my practice is not perfect. And I don't want to be rearranging things to fit the frame. I want to live authentically. And I'm so excited to have you by my side to teach me how to show up authentically to the masses when I've been practicing showing up authentically in my own little community. And I'm ready to take it out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm here for you. I think another pivotal part of our practice has been the deprogramming phase. And that really is, I think, when you step away from social media or you start to be more conscious of the content you're consuming through television or movies or even music, because we all know music holds a very specific vibration, each song, note, and its effect on your energy and your nervous system is, I mean, scientifically proven for one, but also so important to who you are and tuning into your own energy. And so I've been practicing celibacy for the past few months now at this point, and I had a dear friend and mentor say to me, you know, it's great you're practicing sexual intimacy, but what about celibacy of what other things you consume, from food to content to movies to who I'm even hanging around? And so it took me a little longer to step into this mental celibacy, but it has freed my mind like no other practice has before.
I love that. I love that. And I've been watching you grow in how strongly you stand in your truth, and it's really inspiring. And I'm happy that you're continuing on this path and kind of broadening the scope besides just sexual celibacy into every energetic exchange that you're a part of. And I think that because you're so in tune with yourself and you have this practice, and mind you, they call it practice because it's never perfect. They call it practice because you can always deepen it in a new way or find a new line on the web that connects us all. And by attuning your practice and realigning yourself, I'm watching your frequency shift. And it's such a beautiful thing. I mean, never mind that you're a literal shapeshifter. So those who are watching us on YouTube, watch her face, because it's not going to look the same the next time you see her. It's crazy. But it's because you're allowing this energy to flow in, through, and from you. And it's so inspiring and beautiful to watch. And that's why I'm glad that you're being mindful of your consumption, but you're still out there for people to see in your authenticity, because it's something that I think really needs to be seen. And I, as someone who's stepped away from social media, I do still see that there's a shift from everyone using filters to not, and everyone being perfect to showing their sadness. And I love that we're coming into it together at this time and can kind of continue to raise that of, if we're going to share authentically.
We're going to go live on the TikTok eventually, and that will be a really interesting experience to see like how the algorithms connect us to. Because I think there's a lot of magic, as resistant as I might be, which I haven't admitted this out loud, but to things like AI and just the way technology is advancing and losing the human aspect. I'm on the other end of the spectrum where we're like, we have to tune in, we have to liberate ourselves as humans, and not necessarily to save the human race. I don't give a fuck about that. It's all about the collective consciousness to me. This is an energy game. And I think the sooner you start to learn how to play it, because there are rules, and the rules have been put in front of us throughout our entire lives. It just hasn't been stated in an obvious way where we know that these are the rules we're playing by.
Absolutely, right? We cannot, as much as I'd love to go live off the grid, we cannot easily separate ourselves from algorithms, from the capitalist society, from blah, 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 right? These are the programmings that we have been instilled in, and we have been taught that we are not powerful and worthy. And I don't necessarily agree with the complete separation. Let's use these fucking tools. If we have to live in a capitalist society, let's use it. Let's use it right. Let's shift it, right? If we are now having, AI or just like social media or everything being filtered and use it. Be authentic and use it to your advantage, because that's the space that we're in now. Don't let anything take away your power. Use it as a tool. And if it's not worth using, then you can push it to the side and say, you know what? I'm going to exclude myself, as I did previously. And I think the way that we do that is by tuning into this internal universe, right? What's happening inside us, which is what our next episode's going to be about. Tuning into all of those subtle frequencies within us. How do we play and examine and tend to and know how to live this life when you have a symphony inside yourself that's trying to harmonize with the symphony outside yourself? How do we do that? There is so many freaking ways that I can't even too many freaking ways, not a right way, but we can help hopefully guide you into what pieces exist in there and how to give everybody a kiss. And I'm ready to get into the nitty-gritty about how to do it all and what it looks like and how sometimes it's nasty and sometimes it's good. Well, thank you all once again for being here. Grateful for every soul who has entered this little consciousness space that we're trying to hold and create for all of you and for ourselves.
We love you.